What up, folks? What's going on? Welcome to episode number 41 of the Spun Today podcast. I'm your host, Tony Ortiz, and thank you very much for joining me today. This episode, I am recording a bit in advance of how I normally do it, so some stuff might seem outdated. Some stuff might seem super outdated because of the fact that I haven't, in the last episode, I devoted it just to the How Elections Work episode number 40, where I broke down, at least from my understanding of it, the election process here in the United States when voting for president. And I'm not going to bore you guys with those details now. In case you're not into that shit, go check that episode out. It goes into what delegates are versus super delegates and the electoral college and shit like that. So if you like that kind of stuff, go check it out. It's episode number 40 of the Spun Today podcast. And on this episode, I am recording it, what's today? Day before Valentine's, February 13th. And it's coming out on February 25th. So I'm going to cover a few things. And whatever. Hope you guys enjoy it. I saw a couple movies lately. I forgot to speak, or not forgot, but haven't spoken about the last UFC that I saw, which was Bader vs. Johnson. A couple of things about politics, specifically the, the Citizens United Supreme Court decision, and just generally getting money out of politics, which is one of my personal main concerns this election cycle. I'll get into that a little bit later. Something interesting about the Serial podcast, the first season, the Adnan Syed case, and how they're revisiting it now because he is doing his final hearings to see if they are going to reopen up his trial or not. And that's pretty much it. A couple comedy specials, and what else am I going to go over this episode? Super Bowl. Let's start there. Super Bowl. The Broncos won. They were huge underdogs. I was rooting for them to win. And they were just underdogs because of the fact that Carolina was on a tear all season. They lost once, if I'm not mistaken, to the Falcons. And they had one of those just momentum-filled seasons this year. And whereas the Broncos had a very good season, obviously they made it to the Super Bowl. But Peyton Manning is old. He's known for shitting the bed in the playoffs, and that's pretty much his MO. So they were pretty much counted out before it even started. And the game was entertaining. I found it entertaining. And you know what it reminds me of? It reminded me of a Mayweather fight. I think specifically the Pacquiao-Mayweather fight, where it was so widely criticized as being such like a boring, fucked up fight. And there some people like completely loved it. And that was because it was a show of just excellent defense, which was the case, I think, here in the Super Bowl this year. Like, it wasn't like a huge offensive, great running back breakaways and Hail Marys and like awesome offensive plays, but the defense just kept stifling each other's offense like throughout the game. And Denver was able to capitalize on that, obviously, and they won the Super Bowl. And hopefully now Payne retires and he doesn't, like Bill Burr was speaking about this recently, hopefully he doesn't go to finish off his career like one season with some other random team or something, like the fucking the LA Rams or whatever. You kind of want to see him end it now, end on top, and it would be left behind a dope legacy as is. Like, don't tarnish that for whatever. Like, I don't imagine you need money or anything like that, and I know must be tough for athletes in their, to walk away from it all. It's something that they devoted their entire lives to. And they always feel internally, I would imagine, that they'd always be capable of greatness, and and stuff like that. But the reality is that, your body gives out on you over time. So hats off to Peyton and the Broncos. Congrats to them. Another congrats to Anthony Rumble Johnson, who just fucking pummeled Bader, man. Bader was a little too aggressive. He got knocked out within the first 30 seconds or first minute or something of the fight, and his game plan just backfired a little bit. I think he dove in to try and take, I would imagine, what was to try to take Anthony Johnson down. Bader's a very good wrestler, has a wrestling background, and maybe his approach was similar to Daniel Cormier's in that, like to just stifle him, press him up against the cage, out wrestle him, and just like pound him, ground and pound, and like shit like that. But Rumble Johnson was able to stuff the takedown beautifully and just caught him. He like whatever that move is called, where you stuff the takedown, you're both like head to head, but both laid out flat, kind of. And Rumble Johnson was able to it's like some sort of wrestling move. I don't know what it's called, but he was able to like spin around him and get like onto his back and just started like rocking him with those bombs that he fucking throws and just knocked him out right there on the ground. So hats off to Rumble Johnson. Sucks for Bader, man. He was early on in his career, he was one of the fighters I love watching. He pretty much was like one of the best. Pretty much, he was undefeated until I remember the fight where he fought John Bones Jones, if I'm not mistaken, and they were both undefeated, and they're both coming up pretty much at the same time. Both had similar undefeated records, so it was a dope fight just because of that. Somebody was gonna get their first loss, and obviously that was Bader. And since then, he just never was the same since then. He lost a handful of fights, and he won a handful, then he lost a handful again, and I don't know. Now it's like sad to see him lose. It's like bitter sweet, kind of, because I like Rumble Johnson, but sucks for him though. I think everybody still wants to see Anthony Johnson versus John Jones, which is still an interesting matchup. They're both still in their primes. I'm assuming John Jones is still in his prime. He hasn't fought in a while because of the whole coke thing and fucking hitting somebody with his car, suspension, and all that shit. But he's due to come back very soon. He's been posting on Instagram a lot of his workouts and shit like that. He looks like a beast. He's bulking up. Some say he's going to go to heavyweight. And either way, it's going to be exciting to see him back in the swing of things. And a fight with Rumble Johnson would be dope to see. They should do, what they should do? They should do them. Let DC hold on to the belt a little bit more, because I don't think that he's gonna have it after he faces John Jones. No offense to him, but I don't know. I just don't see him holding on to it. And I don't see him holding on to it even if he fights Rumble again. I think Rumble wouldn't approach the fight the same way, and he would be as ready for him as he was for Bader this time around. But we'll see. But it would be dope to see a John Jones versus Anthony Johnson, and then the winner of that gets a title shot. Would be interesting. I wonder if they've announced any of those fights yet. Not sure. Maybe they have. I'm just out of the loop. So, okay, let's see. What else? Went with my fiance yesterday. Pretty much had our Valentine's thing yesterday. We went to Caroline's Comedy Club here in New York City, and I hadn't been there. This was both of our first time there, and it's a dope club. I liked it. I enjoyed the setup. It's like an iconic New York comedy club, and where quote unquote big acts go. I know that it's not like like a workout club like the Comedy Cellar or the Comedy Underground or anything like that, but it's a dope venue nonetheless. And we saw Marlon Wayans, which was I was curious to go see him because he's a Wayans brother. I like their movies and for example, I saw Marlon on The Breakfast Club recently. Always seemed like a cool dude, like in his interviews and stuff like that. Funny guy. And his older brother Damon is obviously like an iconic comic. But Marlon specifically hadn't done stand-up comedy really. He's like a comedy actor, which is a big difference. But he's always like really funny and hilarious in interviews and stuff like that, and it's all his weird Jim Carrey like mannerisms and shit. And I was curious to see how he was going to do because I was interested in the story of how he started on this comedy path, I guess, stand-up comedy path. And it's pretty much he auditioned for a role. He was up for a role to play Richard Pryor in a movie that's going to be done of Richard Pryor's life. He did not get the role, and Mike Epps got the role, actually. But in working out, I guess, for the road, he wanted to like embody that character, which is admirable for an actor to do. And he started doing stand-up just to feel like what it's like or whatever, and supposedly fell in love with it. And since then, he's been actually dedicating time to stand-up, and he's been touring the country and stuff like that, which is a pretty dope background story. I like that. Obviously, it also plays in to his benefit in promoting his movies, and because his movies are low budget. For example, now he has the 50 Shades of Black movie, which looks kind of funny. It's getting horrible reviews. It looks kind of funny. Honestly, I didn't really want to see it, at least not in theaters. But it's getting really bad reviews, which sucks. The whole stand-up comedy thing is a good way for him to promote projects like that. I think the whole movie has like a $5 million budget, so it's not like super wide like distribution or anything. For example, like the theater that I love going to, my favorite theater, shout out to AMC in Fresh Meadows, only has it showing one time a day at 10 o'clock in the morning, which sucks. So a movie that's not going to have that much push behind it, and it's not in like every theater either. Like there's other theaters around I checked. A few of them have it. But yeah, like I said, didn't really want to see the movie in the first place. And the fact that it's like just so like out, like you have to go out of your way to kind of see it sucks. But like I said, it's being that it's not going to have that, big movie push behind it. It works out, I would imagine, in his benefit to, also double up the whole comedy touring thing with promoting of his movie. Which is how I even, in the first place, found out that he was doing stand-up and going to be at Caroline's when I saw him on The Breakfast Club, which he was at, promoting both the movie and his stand-up dates and shit like that. So they're smart dudes, obviously, the Wayans, and know how to market their shit. So that's what's up. More power to them. And his stand-up was good. It was funny. Me and my girl both had a really good time. And he was more... what's the word I'm looking for? Like Jim Carrey-ish in terms of his mannerisms and his style of comedy, and incorporating a lot of his like facial expressions that he's famous for and stuff like that. He paid like an homage to certain characters that he's played in the past, like from White Chicks and the dude he played, the like super thugged out dude that he played in Don't Be a Menace in South Central while drinking a juice in the hood. I forget the name of that character, but they had like the crazy braids and pacifiers like in his hair and shit. But it was dope, you know, very high energy, very, very entertaining. We definitely had a good time, and I recommend you guys check him out if you have the opportunity to do so. All right, so I saw a couple movies, and recently, one this past Thursday, and the other one like a couple weeks ago. And the first one is Spotlight, which I hadn't seen. It is one of those movies that's it's probably gonna, I believe, is nominated for like movie of the year in the Oscars, which I'm actually looking forward to seeing for the first time ever. I don't know why. It's February 28th this year in 2016. And I guess it's because of the caliber of movies that I've actually been watching a lot more movies lately, so I know like what the movies actually are, and the whole hype behind the Leonardo DiCaprio getting his first Oscar, which I thought was a Golden Globe a few weeks ago. I stand corrected, it's not. And the actual Oscars are going to be this February 28th, 2016. So the movie is Spotlight. It's the movie of pretty much how, based on true events, how the pedophile priests within the Catholic religion were discovered, and how it turned out to be this huge systemic problem with hundreds of priests, if not, well, eventually thousands of priests across the globe within the religion, but hundreds of priests, just like in one town in Boston, in Massachusetts. Like, it started out with like a few dozen, then they realized it was much more than that, and it wound up being like 140 something, if my numbers are correct, priests just in Boston alone. And then eventually that were actually discovered, thousands, like I said, across the globe. And the bigger, deeper issue is that, you know, it's priests, it's religion, people, you know, turn the other cheek, pardon the pun, and look the other way and let disgusting shit like that happen. Just so fucking sad and fucking crazy to think that a problem could get so exacerbated. And it was a systemic issue in that priests that were caught or that rumored to you know, be molesting children and had complaints filed against them, the church had agreements with certain lawyers and law firms and pretty much the court system to what's that shit called, like they do in the NFL, fucking like police their own and regulate their own shit. And the way they did that was to take that priest and take him out of that specific church and move him to a different parish or whatever, where he pretty much ultimately continued doing the same shit over and over and over again. And they found out this fucking game of just shuffling pedophile priests around just obviously didn't fix the issue. It just exacerbated it and made that happen in, you know, all different types of places. People were moved from like Boston to South America to different countries, and people that spoke out were moved as punishment, like other priests that spoke out against stuff like this. And it's crazy. Like, I remember hearing about like the whole pedophile priest thing like a few years ago, but I didn't know it was anything like that. I thought it was like, you know, oh, they found another one. I thought it was like 10 or something, you know, in like one weird area of the fucking world. I don't know, it was like that, you know, like thousands across the entire globe, all throughout the Catholic fucking religions. Fucking disgusting, man. Fucking sick and sad. Like, so sad that like people had to go through that type of stuff. And the movie did a really good job of showing like different individual situations of people that went through it, that came back and spoke out to Spotlight, which it's called Spotlight because the team on the Boston Globe, I believe, or the Boston Gazette, some newspaper in Boston that did this type of investigative journalism, was called Spotlight. and that's the name of the movie. So certain people that came out to speak to the members of the Spotlight team, the 4 members. Shout out to Michael Keaton, by the way, did a fucking awesome job, and Mark Ruffalo, who's like one of my favorite actors, especially after this role. Really enjoyed him in this movie. But they did an excellent job of showing how this super traumatizing situation that happened to this individual as a child played out like throughout the person's life, and what they wound up turning into in the future, like as adults. And it's sad, man. It's crazy impactful, just like on a one person level. And imagine systemically, through like thousands of occurrences, and like that ripple effect that has on those people's children, who probably, people that get molested wind up molesting in large part, and so on and so forth. And it's crazy. Very good movie, though. I definitely recommend you guys checking it out. The next movie, a little bit on a lighter note, is called The Cobbler. It was an indie movie in 2014, released and starred Adam Sandler. And it actually was a really good movie. I really liked it. My girl did too. And the concept of it was so cool. Like it's like one of those concepts that I was like, damn, I wish I would have thought of that to like write a short story on, or something like that, or novel or whatever. And the concept of it, and spoiler alert, I'm gonna try not to spoil it, but in case I do, and it came out in 2014. So if you haven't seen it, and you probably weren't gonna see it anyway. But it's on Netflix if you do want to see it. It's called The Cobbler. Adam Sandler is the son of a cobbler, which is a shoe repair dude, which I didn't know before. But his father, he's Jewish. His father was a cobbler. His father before him was a cobbler. His father before him. So they lived in New York. And they had a little shop which he passed down generation to generation. Adam Sandler always wanted to, be other things, but he was a responsible guy. He, stayed home living with his mother after his father left them, and he pretty much disappeared off the face of the planet, or so he thought. And he stayed home with his sick, schizophrenic mom, and taking care of her, and just running the family business, which was that small cobbler shop. And he always wanted to, like I said, do other things. He didn't know what he wanted. So he was pretty much just going through the motions of his life and doing those things because he felt that's what he should be doing. Then he found his cobbler soul changing machine broke, so he went into the basement and going through all of his old father stuff, and found a very old school sewing machine looking thing, and finished repairing the pair of shoes that he was working on with that machine. And then eventually he wound up putting on that pair of shoes, and he turned into, literally physically turned into the person whose shoes it was, which was actually Method Man's, who acted pretty well in this movie. And it was interesting to see him in another movie. It was pretty dope too. And Method Man was like a hustler, drug dealer dude, and he dropped off his gators and to get the soles changed. And Adam Sandler put on the shoes, and he turned into Method Man. And then he realized that it was like some power in that machine that his father had stashed in the basement, that whenever he changed soles of shoes with that machine, and if he put on those shoes, he could turn into that particular person and quote unquote walk a mile in their shoes or whatever. You don't know what another person is going through until you walk in their shoes. This kind of personified that, this movie. And it was pretty cool to see like what he did with that. That he started changing soles and shoes on a whole bunch of other shoes of people that never went back to like get their shoes, and he would put it on, and the story then just shows him, actually seeing what it's like to walk in another person's shoes and stuff like that, which is a very interesting concept that I liked. But that's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to spoil it for you guys. Feel free to check it out on Netflix. The Cobbler movie. And it's from an indie movie from 2014. Now, what else? Speaking of stand-up and Netflix, I saw recently also Sebastian Maniscalco's 2011 special, which is on Netflix, which is called What's Wrong With You People. And I've seen clips of Sebastian before because I saw him I listened to him on Rogan's podcast before. And he was recently in Comedians in Cars also. And I've seen clips on YouTube of his comedy, and I didn't really take to it. Honestly, I thought like his voice inflection and like the way he speaks was like annoying. And I don't know, after watching Comedians in Cars, my girl wanted to watch it. Actually watch his like full special. I was like, I don't think it's that good, but whatever, let's watch it. But that's why you definitely shouldn't judge a book by its cover or by, little clips on YouTube, because we watched it and it was really funny and we both really enjoyed it. And you guys might also. He has these bits about like everyday things that I really related to a lot. Like he speaks about how, I don't know, when he went to like Subway and the person in front of him is like, oh, how does this work? What do I have to do? He's telling the attendant, and like he's standing behind him and he's thinking, he was like, it says step 1, pick your bread on the fucking wall. You know what I mean? Like, how are you so absent-minded that you don't like notice that and whatever? And then he's like so completely opposite to that doesn't want to take time to like hold out to people behind him online, which I'm like that too. He's like, yeah, just give me that bread, and yeah, just put everything on it. Okay, thanks, bye. Like that, which I really relate to. I'm like that, which sucks sometimes, but whatever, that's how I am. And I really related to that, and pretty much went through like that same scenario with other situations, like going grocery shopping, and how you get to how if he gets to the checkout line and the steak that he just picked up doesn't have the barcode on it, and the cashier has to go get a different steak or get a price on it or something, and it's going to take too long, he just says that he doesn't want the steak and just takes everything else and leaves. Just not to waste the time and piss off the people behind him, which I relate to as well. And I don't know, I just thought it was funny, certain things, probably because I related to it so much. But he's a funny dude. You guys check it out if you want to. It's Sebastian Maniscalco, 2011 special on Netflix, and it's called What's Wrong With You People. And if you want to get a taste or an idea of what I meant by like his voice is kind of like annoying, or the way he speaks, and I thought it was like forced because I heard 3 hours of it on Rogan's podcast when he was on it, and it's really how he fucking talks. But if you want a little taste of that, check out him on Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee in this past season. Very recently, he was on it like an episode or two ago. All right, so I got a couple things left. Let's start with this one's going to be a bit smaller to cover, which is pretty much the status of the whole Adnan Syed case. And for those of you that don't know, it's from like if you don't know, then I'm not going to get into the whole thing, but listen to Serial Podcast Season 1. It's about a dude that's been in jail for like 20 years for allegedly murdering his high school girlfriend, and there's this whole uproar of how he's not guilty. So he is having hearings now as we speak, currently in 2016, and the judge has not given his ruling yet. I believe the hearings are over, and Serial, as well as the Undisclosed podcast, has put out like 3 or 4 small episodes, like 15-20 minute episodes, because they went to the actual hearings and they're reporting back to us, the listening public, of, you know, what they saw, who got interviewed, and like shit like that. Like, for example, the alibi witness that was never in the original trial, where Adnan Syed was found guilty and imprisoned for life, which was a girl that went to school with them, which pretty much said, oh, I saw you at that same exact time that they said you murdered the girl, and you were in the library, don't you remember? I was with you, and so my boyfriend and his other friend saw you too. And that girl never testified in the first trial, but she now did come forth and testified in the hearing. So pretty much what happens is that the judge finished hearing sides for and against reopening this trial, and his decision is pending to see if he's going to grant Adnan Syed a new trial or not. So we're waiting on that, and the decisions could take. They said on the Undisclosed podcast, and it's a group of 3 attorneys that go like super deep into like the whole like legal mumbo jumbo, all the legal shit that goes on with the fine-tooth comb, and get into all that stuff. Said that a decision from the judge could take up to as much as like 2 months to come out, which isn't long at all in this type of case, but whatever, it feels long to us. So we're waiting on that, and pretty much the defense is arguing that Adnan Syed should have a new case because his attorney at the time, which represented him, was unfit to represent him. She was sick. She actually died. I believe it was from cancer, but she also had MS, and she like smoked and she was on like a lot of different medications and shit like that. And they want to point out, that she didn't even look into this witness, potential witness to alibi witness to testify. So that just shows how out of it she was. And being that he didn't have fit representation, they should reopen the case. And in doing so, then, they can include all this other shit that she initially left out from his first case. What I find super interesting from this, that I guess I heard it in like Serial, but they brought like more light to it and went a little deeper into it with the Undisclosed podcast, is that Gutierrez, which was Adnan's attorney, before she died, she was disbarred for having 36 client complaints of not fighting their case right, not fighting their case to the best of like her abilities. 36 complaints that led her to become disbarred, aka she got kicked out from the fucking being an attorney. Like, she couldn't practice law anymore because of this. This bitch was like the Bill Cosby of fucking lawyers. 36 clients complained like, yo, you didn't do what you were supposed to do. And obviously it had some weight because she got disbarred. That's fucking nuts to me. That in and of itself is like, yeah, let's take a look at this other case again. It has like so much attention and public outcry tied in with the fact that 36 motherfuckers got you disbarred pretty much. Yeah, let's figure this shit out. Do over. I don't know. It just seems like common sense to me, which we are just lacking as fucking people, I think, sometimes. Which leads me to my next and final thing that I want to cover this episode, which is the whole idea and push of getting money out of politics. It really is, if you break things down, the single most important issue that we're facing today, and definitely with this election, how I'll explain in a bit how it ties into everything, and it really is the root of pretty much any political issue that you're behind or not behind or against or whatever. If you break it down, there's money at the root of it. So if you look at climate change, for example, how do you have motherfuckers saying that it literally does not exist, and people saying that it's 100% going to kill the planet, and politicians, I'm saying, and you have like people on both sides, and at the root of it is the monetary influence of people on the right, such as the Koch brothers, who have their fortune from fossil fuels, investing in politicians of the right, Republicans, and coincidentally, quote unquote, that is the party that's largely for the idea that climate change does not exist. So money's at the root of that, clearly at the root of that contention. You can take an issue like abortion. If you're pro-life, aka women can't choose to do what they want with their bodies and have abortions, you lean towards the right, towards the Republican Party, where I'm sure there's not a substantial enough separation of church and state when it comes to religious lobbies and that whole murky water of abortions. Whereas on the left, you have more of a pro-choice, do whatever the fuck you want with your body type of approach to the situation, within reason, right? Which within common sense. Like, you can't pull the fucking third trimester fetus out of your body. Like, that's fucked up, obviously. But money is at the root of that convoluted issue as well. Like, the lobbyists of both sides flooding the issue with their versions of the pros and cons, and mixed in with religion and any issue. I think you could really break down to that being the root cause. Healthcare, for example, having the pharmaceutical interest pushing the agenda of them being the gatekeepers of healthcare in this country, which they are, and being able to dictate pricing within that market, which the whole Obamacare has taken steps in that direction, but obviously we're not where we should be as a country in terms of healthcare, education, and them having a stranglehold, higher education having stranglehold on the pricing of education, which doesn't have a direct correlation of the worth of a fucking education, which is why you have so many people riddled in debt that can't even get a fucking job. But yeah, things are the way they are because of the laws that are in place. The laws that are in place because of the way politicians vote, and politicians vote according to who lines their pockets, which are these lobbyists, from whatever special interest is involved in that particular facet that the politician happens to be voting on, which varies obviously from geographical region to region, and subsets of Congress are broken down into different committees that oversee different things like agriculture or gun right laws and like stuff like that. So politicians' votes are pretty much bought and like swayed based on that, while they're also walking the fine line of voting public opinion. They sway back and forth, and they try to walk that line, and their votes usually fall on the side of obviously the people that get them there, which is people that put up the dollars. Now, and then our opinion as people are obviously swayed based on the inputs that we take in, and a lot of people don't look, myself included, don't look deeper into issues and take things at face value, just read headlines and like shit like that, and listening to certain politicians, which are pretty much puppets echoing the sentiments of the interests that are supporting them financially. And that's why we wind up believing things that we shouldn't, or voting for the wrong people. And then you have other circumstances where we're like, we actually are like, no, hold on a second, that doesn't fucking sound right. Like, how could like a 90% of public opinion within a Gallup poll represent, yes, global warming is bad, we have to do something about the environment and stuff like that, but there's still like a political debate within Congress and our elected officials as to if it's true or not, and significant legislation to move our dependence away from fossil fuels and stuff like that can't get passed. So things like that are a testament to politicians not voting for the people, I guess, in certain circumstances. And again, the root of that is money in politics. And the point is that, and I didn't know this before I started looking into it a little bit more, which is what I want to share with you guys, is the whole Citizens United gets thrown around. That was a court decision where 5 justices, Justice Roberts, Kennedy, Scalia, Stevens, and Thomas, voted for Citizens United, which wasn't... We have to backtrack a little bit to 1976. There was another Supreme Court decision which ruled that money is a form of free speech. That was Buckley versus Valeo. And I have links to this, to each of those decisions in the episode notes for any of you to check out from the Cornell Public Law, the Cornell School Public Law Library, or whatever it's called, from Cornell University. And so Buckley versus Valeo pretty much ruled that money is free speech. Money equals free speech. Now, Citizens United voted to further articulate that, and that money equals speech, which is fucking ridiculous bullshit. And most importantly, or even worse, more so worse than that, that corporations can donate unlimited sums of that quote-unquote free speech to political candidates, and they do so through things called super PACs, which is all public information. You can look up super PAC donations, but also through 501c nonprofit corporations that are set up where they can, like in some like extreme situations, yes, you know, if we need to, we can. Like, they absolutely do give unlimited sums of money, which is not public, because it's through 501c nonprofit organizations. It's all like private information. It's undisclosed money to politicians. Now, there's a great article by it's an old article by that I found titled "Analysis: First Amendment Conquers All?" ? Does the First Amendment conquer all? Basically, written by Victor Tiffany. That article is in the episode notes as well. Does a great job of summarizing like this entire situation. But I love the way he started it, which is with a quote from Senator John McCain, which stated, "Citizens United was the most misguided, naive, uninformed, egregious decision of the United States Supreme Court, I think, in the 21st century." And it is sick. It's so fucking nonsensical that like I'm literally at a loss for words sometimes when I think about this type of shit. They are literally saying that money equals free speech. And I'm not an attorney. I'm let alone a fucking judge, let alone a justice of the Supreme Court. But these motherfuckers don't have, there's no contesting a Supreme Court decision. There's no appellate court to the Supreme Court. Their decisions are final, as far as I know. All we have is the court of public opinion, which is a fucking podcast, which is blogging, which is writing, which is journalists who actually have, journalistic integrity and shit like that, and people who have a platform big enough to actually speak out against this type of shit. So it is what it is. And my point is that certain things are not black and white. And too often, that's how things within our legal system are defined, which couldn't be more incorrect in my opinion, especially in a situation like this, where just read a couple excerpts here from the decision. In both cases, right. So their main rationalization is that the court defined freedom of speech as protected by the First Amendment from the perspective of the listener, rather than the speaker. The court held that the listener had the right to listen to all sources, whether the source be corporations, partnerships, other businesses, entities, individuals, associations, or nonprofits. Meaning basically, in my estimation of it, that money equals speech because you as a listener, you as a person receiving this freedom of speech, have the right to hear everything out. Which at face value, you know, looking at it from a very, very black and white perspective, makes sense, right? You should be able to hear everything and anything and everything before you make your decision on whatever it is that you're about to make that decision on. What it doesn't factor in is that when you apply that to money and are dealing with people that have such a varying spectrum of levels of money, you're dealing with different volumes of that free speech. How the fuck are you going to compare my pockets to the Koch brothers' pockets? My level of free speech, quote unquote, to their level of free speech? You can't. And what this type of situation allows for is literally the drowning out of the quote unquote free speech that the big baller types don't want you to hear. And if you drown out voices that can amplify themselves, then you are in essence eliminating their free speech. And you're obviously creating a situation where someone's free speech is worth more than somebody else's free speech. And to that I say, oh, my bad. I'm sorry. My freedom of speech just got drowned out by somebody else's louder freedom of speech. I apologize for that. What I was going to say is that to that, I say, fuck you to the naivete of the Supreme Court that allowed a 5-4 decision in this respect to happen, which is probably one of the most important things that we have to factor into this next election, folks, is the fact that due to retirement and fucking probably dying of some of the Supreme Court justices, the next president that we elect will have to appoint up to 3 new justices to the Supreme Court. So we have to take that into very deep consideration, because those 9 justices send and have always sent, their sentiment sends a ripple effect throughout the history of our country and how things play out ultimately throughout the world. And their sentiments are echoed ultimately by the president that we elect, because they are the ones that appoint Supreme Court justices in accordance to their political slants, and obviously they have to get affirmed as well, but they do have to get appointed by the president of the United States, like Obama appointed Justice Sotomayor, the first Latina woman, which didn't vote for this crazy shit, by the way. And yeah, that's it. That's all I gotta say about that. And that's the episode, folks. Episode number 41 of the Spun Today podcast. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen. And please spread the word. Tell all your friends about the podcast. And or just tell perfect strangers about the podcast by going onto iTunes and or Stitcher and rating and reviewing the podcast. That helps the podcast raise in rank and popularity, and more people will be exposed to my nonsense by you doing so. You can support the podcast by shopping on Amazon or on iTunes through my affiliate link banners. If you're buying music or books or whatever on iTunes, or anything at all on Amazon, which I know you motherfuckers do because everybody shops on Amazon. I fucking love it. If you want to support the podcast at the same time, go to my website first at spuntoday.com/affiliate links. and click on any of the banners there, and it'll take you to the website that you want to shop on. Nothing costs you anything extra. It's just a way to drive traffic to their websites, and they give the Spun Today podcast a kickback for that. And what else? Follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at Spun Today on both. Like the Facebook fan page, facebook.com/Spun Today. Subscribe to my newsletter. Go to spuntoday.com/newsletter. We'll stay in touch once a week. Send you guys some interesting shit. I'm sending out like pictures of the day and picture of the week, like, you know, cool images or like photography style images that I find on the internet, whether it be on Instagram or Twitter or anything like that. Share it with you guys, as well as my favorite podcast of the week. I listen to a shitload of podcasts, all different types from, I'll just read you guys off some real quick from my phone. Obviously, the Joe Rogan Experience, Freakonomics Radio, Tim Ferriss's podcast, The Tim Ferriss Show, The Monday Morning Podcast with Bill Burr, The Drunken Taoist podcast, the Duncan Trussell Family Hour, The Rubin Report, Waking Up with Sam Harris, 538, which is about elections and shit, Market Foolery, about stock market stuff, Dan Carlin's Hardcore History on Fire, The Creative Pen, Joanna Penn's podcast, which is great, Star Talk Radio, I Am Rappaport, I Fucks with Hard Body Karate, the Adam Carolla Show, Aubrey Marcus's podcast, What the Fuck, with Mark Maron, the MMA Hour with Ariel Awani, Bad for Business with Jerry Ferrara, Radio Lab, Mental Illness Happy Hour, Talk Nerdy, The Fighter and the Kid, EMA Radio, shout out to them, Serial Undisclosed, just a whole bunch of different fucking podcasts. Crazy amount of podcasts I listen to, like on some sick level shit. I listen to all the time, and some of them have amazing gems within them, and I want to share that with you guys. So I will also pick a podcast of the week and share that with you guys as well through my newsletter. It's going to be an episode that resonated with me for whatever reason, and you guys can sign up again to the newsletter through spuntoday.com/newsletter. I'll now share that with you guys as well. And that's pretty much it, guys. Buy my book. Make Way for You. Tips for getting out of your own way. The paperback as well as ebook formats are available at Amazon.com or through my website, spuntoday.com/books. As always, folks, substitute the mysticism with hard work and start taking steps in the general direction of your dreams. Thanks for listening.